A. So if you've got a second generation Volt and your ABS light, your traction light, your check engine light, they're all on, and you scan it and you get a wheel speed sensor code or ABS sensor code, this is probably your problem. There's a TSB out on this. GM should be fixing these for free, but they don't. And I'll show you what I mean and what's wrong. Here's the old wheel speed sensors out of the car. Do you see the difference between them? You see that slot that's cut right into this wheel speed sensor? There's a reason for that. And that's what's wrong with the car, is the washer on the axle. There's basically the axle goes through the spindle and there's a washer at the end of it. It's like an anti-click washer, and it breaks. And as the axle spins, it essentially cuts a groove right in the middle of this and it ruins it. And if you think, oh, it's just a bad wheel speed sensor, let me just go replace it. Well, guess what? The brand new sensor is going to immediately break. I did that. Mine immediately broke. So I'm going to go show you the steps on getting that axle nut washer out of the axle. And you don't put a new one in. The TSB says you just leave it out. First, we're going to jack it up, and we're going to take the tire off, and we're going to support this car with jack stands. So the wheel's off. You see this black wire? This is brand new. That's why it looks so much shinier than everything else. You follow it back, and you remove this 10mm bolt. I've pre-loosened it just to make it easier for filming, and then you pull this out. I installed this ABS sensor yesterday, okay? Shouldn't have that groove in it. Means that axle washer is destroyed it. And this is, like I said, I installed it yesterday. So we're gonna take a 32mm axle nut socket. Take off the axle nut. I'm hoping I can push this in a little bit without having to take all this off and get the washer out from the back. Don't ruin the threads. You thread this back on till it's about flush, and then you take a hammer and you hit it. So you can see that moving in, and that should have loosened everything up. Right. Once you get in there, you can see that sometimes the pieces will fall off. This is part of that socket, the anti-lock nut washer. So it sits like this in kind of that space between the axle and the whole assembly. What do you want to call that? The control arm assembly or whatever. Or the knuckle rather. So you just have to kind of dig around in there. Maybe if you can rotate the axle. To rotate the axle, it'd be easier if we jack up the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I have this on the jack stand. I'm going to go around. I'm going to jack up the other side, and that way we can freely spin the wheel, and we'll see that if the other, because only half of it came out, we'll see if the other half of the split nut washer got it up to where it's free spinning now. And I've got this little magnetic thing. It'll pick it up. So we'll see if we can maybe kind of, you see that red? That's it. That's what we're trying to get out. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna knock this back a little bit, give us a bit more space, go in with the magnet and get the washer out, and that's it. So GM's method will have you taking the rotor off, the thing off, the ball, the caliper off, the ball joint off, kind of moving the control arm, like really just get the whole axle out of the knuckle, and then taking that off. But you don't have to do all that. It's a lot of work. So now that this will no longer destroy any more ABS sensors, now we need to go and replace the wheel speed sensor. So I'll show you how we can do that as well. This thing, you got to put it back on now. Obviously you're going to torque it on, right? You're not going to just impact it back on, right? Because that would be totally the wrong thing to do. If you look under the hood, right over here, you see this wire coming up? This is the ABS sensor wire. And then you disconnect it. And it's usually clipped to the firewall right here. So once it's loose, it goes through that hole. Sorry, there we go. So it goes right through that hole over there, and it's usually clipped to this black thing over here. So we come down here, we've obviously unbolted it. What you do, it sits in right in there. There's a 10mm nut. You take it out, bolt, you take it out, you pull this off, okay? And you undo it right here. And then, well, the new one comes with all these clips. So what you can really do is brute force this and just pull on it and yank on it, and it'll all come out. Now, in my case, my new one got broken because of that split washer. So I'm gonna actually undo this and open it and take it out. But the rest of them, I don't really care about. So you just pull, yank, brute force, and that's it. ABS sensor. So I'm gonna go get the other one. A replacement ABS sensor. Can't say new because this is actually the one from the other side. You stick it in there, and then we take our 10mm bolt, and then we hand start it, and then we can get it in the rest of the way with a ratchet or something. Be very careful with this, it will break off. It'll break off in there. It's an aluminum bolt. And then stick it back in there, and you stick this part right in here, and you clamp it down. Well, you know, it's hard to do with one hand, but you clamp it down, and then you take this plug part, you pull this back up here, and it goes in right through that hole. Once it comes out through this hole, you can plug it in to your sensor, and then when this thing, it slides onto that black part right there. Hard to do with one hand, but you get the idea.